I'm Josh Allen, and welcome to the Baked In Podcast, where I sit down with industry innovators to uncover the unique ideas and values that are baked into their businesses and have led to extraordinary success. This podcast is presented by Busey Bank. Since Busey opened their doors in 1868, they've upheld a pledge to foster customer relationships and vibrant communities, embodying a legacy of partnership and progress. With multiple lines of business, Busey provides a range of financial solutions tailored to your needs. From digital banking to planning for retirement, Busey is here to help you achieve your financial goals. Busey Bank, building businesses, growing wealth since 1868. Learn more at busey.com. On this week's episode, I sit down with Jimmy Sansone, founder and co-owner of the Normal brand, a fashion company focused on easy, comfortable clothing suitable for both workdays and weekends. In the 9 years since launching with a small collection of hats, Jimmy and his brothers Lan and Conrad have opened 11 stores in cities including St. Louis, Nashville, and Indianapolis, entered partnerships with nearly 500 stores nationwide, and have continued to build a strong online brand. We talk about leading through core values, making managed bets into the future, and the value of working out with your dad. Let's roll. So you started this thing, it was like 4 or 5 hats, and you in the basement of your parents' house in 2015, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So how has the vision stayed the same, and how has it changed from that? Because if I heard correctly, you started with hats because it was the easiest and you were just trying to build the capital to buy the first run of shirts or something like that?
Yeah, the original name was, and I had like a website and I had a logo on 99designs.com, but the original name was Normal Shirts. So I was calling them Normal Shirts. The idea was always shirts at the beginning. And I was trying to get them made, and every sample that came in was just getting worse and worse. And so I was
no experience at all in the industry to know
none,
even sort of what to ask for or how
Zero.
To fix it.
So I was going back and forth from LA a lot, where LA has a lot more like talent there, and so I was trying to figure it out with factory partners and stuff there, and then I would like bring the stuff back, and I would go to different tailors around town. Tailors I still go to today to like get just like regular, like, tailoring, hemming done and things like that. But I would go to different tailorings and I would say, how would you make this? And I would just listen to them, and they would I've got videos of it, of them like clipping pieces of the arm or bringing in the waist or working on like the shoulder slope and things like that to try to make the shirt fit better. And I just wasn't happy with it. I was just pretty obsessed with making it fit really well.
So you knew what you wanted, but you didn't know how to articulate it to these factories kind of
correct
thing?
Yeah, I didn't. Now there's things called tech packs and things like that are basically blueprints to build the item that you want to build. I just didn't know about that. So I was just kind of figuring it out by trial and error and figuring out with these different tailors around town. And then my dad actually got me for Christmas, because I did have a logo done. And so my dad got me a hat with just our logo on it, and I, at the time,
is that the bear? I mean, has the logo stayed the same?
Yeah.
Since then?
Yeah, it did. So it was Normal Shirts first. And then the first like money I actually spent was with a really small branding shop that's actually in St. Louis. It was called BC Designers at the time, and the founder is a woman named Reshma Chamberlain. Reshma went on to found Somersault with Lori Coulter. So Somersault is a big swimwear brand here in town, but at the time Reshma just had this little shop. And I came to her, and I could tell she just got it right away. She's like a really sharp, got a great eye. And so, she helped come up with this logo, which I just loved. And so, my dad put it on a hat for me for Christmas, and I was wearing it around, and he was like, you're trying to figure out these shirts. You should get it out there, get the story out there and stuff. And I was kind of like I'm too good for that. I was like, no, we got to wait for these shirts. And then I heard it a few more times. I heard it from some other people. And so, just got some hats made and built a quick website and launched in March of 2015.
Yeah, so what I don't want to leave here for a second is Dad, because there seems to be a recurring theme of him kind of dropping these kind of simple things that become pretty big deals, right? So I'll go back to what I read about that I thought was so fascinating was the summer camp deal that you started were you 12 or 13 when you started that?
Yeah.
So tell me about that a little bit, because that was his idea also, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of this, so much of this and our entire, any success is really a result of our parents and my grandparents too. And just kind of like teaching these things that were the number one blessing in our life is to have that. But yeah, I'm the oldest of 10 kids. At the time, I think I was like 12, maybe there was 7 of us. And I, grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad has, his own business. He worked with his brothers. My mom had her own business. And so, yeah, it was one of those things. It was like I asked for something and he was like, yeah, sure, go pay for it. And I was like, well, what can I do? I can't get a job anywhere. And he said, well, why don't you start a summer camp? You babysit all the time anyways. You babysit all your brothers and sisters, work with your brother and get a flyer going. And, I bet you could have a pretty good summer camp and make cash at the beginning of the summer. And so that started, I think I was 12 years old. And me and my brothers ran that until I was like 19 or 20 maybe.
And actually, I think just had the 23rd season.
Still continues to this day.
Passed on to
my younger siblings. Yeah, and it's always like the first week of June. Ton of kids. We bring in local athletes and professional athletes and stuff like that, and it's great. And you can make the money that you need for that summer, like in a week.
So how has that informed just sort of how you've even continued on in terms of as you think about leadership?
Well, I think from the beginning. Certainly when we were younger, I think there was just a practicality to it. Like, you want to do something, it doesn't need to be this like incredible, like sophisticated business plan. It was pretty simple. And, it took some being uncomfortable. I remember like, when you're younger and you're trying to get parents to trust you with their kids, there's a level of like, it's kind of an uncomfortable, but you have to grow up fast. And then it got that entrepreneurial spirit in us very, very early. And so from that moment on, I knew that I wouldn't work for somebody like in my professional life, like long term. I knew that I wanted to have, my own thing. I knew I wanted to work with my brothers. So it was a very informative. I mean, I had a great job right out of school. I worked in investment banking. I worked in finance. I worked with a lot of smart people. But those little entrepreneurial ventures I had starting when I was 12 years old, and they continued in different ways, like throughout high school and even into college. Those were by far my most informative, and it's helped us a lot at the Norbrand.
And your family, so is it commercial real estate or real estate development that your family's in? And they, is it right that there's a hard rule that there's no third generation? Like that was just I grew up in a family business. I would have been 4th generation. My family's 3rd generation is the one that really blew it up and grew it into a pretty significant business before they sold in the early 2000s. But I mean, that's pretty fascinating. How was it articulated to you as a member of the 3rd generation that there was no opportunity?
My grandpa told us, and he was very direct and tough, but full of love. And we were extremely tight with him. He passed away in April of 2020, but he had 8 kids. So my dad is one of 8. My grandma has, 50 grandkids, 48 grandkids. It's a huge family. So I've got tons of cousins and things like that. And so just practically and logistically, it just doesn't work that you have, a 3rd generation that comes in and cousins are working with each other. It's just, there's too many.
Sure.
And so he did a lot of research on it, a lot of work on it. And congrats to your family. The percentage of like 3rd generation businesses, the percentage of 2nd generation businesses that succeed are very low. The percentage of 3rd, it's like low single digit percentages. And so he made it clear, like when we were very young, but we got so many great benefits from having really a front row seat to watching a successful business, watching a family business. We learned kind of what to do, what not to do. Work was always talked about around, it was talked about at dinner. It was talked about like, it wasn't something that you just shut off after 5 o'clock. And so those things were, really taught us and from the time we were little.
But early, you knew that you were going to have to forge your own way.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting. I grew up and we thought, I certainly spent my whole life until I started baking thinking that that's what I was going to do. And it gave me in some respects this kind of freedom to try things in college, classes, and a field of I was an American studies major. Like I never would have done that if I thought, oh my God, I got to figure out my own shit. Right. So it gave me that freedom to, which I think has really helped me be a little bit more well-rounded and I've ended up in the food business anyway, and it didn't work out, but it'd be interesting to think about where I'd be if somebody had said to me early, like, that's not an option. Like,
yeah. I think that there was, in a good way, a level of pressure to kind of like figure something out. But it also I remember, he would always say it's a thinking man's game. So just, always be thinking and looking for opportunities and things like that. And, the way the Normal brand, I don't think had I had that where it was like, yeah, you can't go into this business. It was a great blessing to be able to have that because it did make us think, made me think. So the way the Normal brand came about is I just wanted a normal shirt for myself. Had I thought maybe, okay, I'll just go into this family business eventually, I probably wouldn't have taken it a step further. I would have just gotten that shirt. And but because of that, I was able to think, okay, well, I like it. People are asking me about it. Maybe this could be a business. And so, yeah, it's great.
But like you mentioned, no experience, no idea how to source it, no idea how to put it together. What was missing in your mind was just a particular shirt that you were looking for? You just couldn't find it anywhere?
Yeah, I think, there were some three pretty formative years where I left my job and where I left banking before I really sold the first shirt, where I kind of had this victim mindset, frankly. And I was kind of trying to start it, but then I would run into a problem and I would think, this must not be the way. This must not be like the thing for me to do. And so I had all these options, like options A, B, C, D. I was applying to a business school. I was applying for jobs. I was also doing this normal shirt thing, but it was kind of like I would run into a problem. I'd be like, this must not be the thing for me. Like, let me get back on this. Let me make sure I get into a good business school. Let me make sure I get this good job. So kind of systematically, these things got pulled away from me. Thank God. But, starting with school, I really wanted to go to Wharton, in Penn. So I got to final interviews, final rounds around these like brilliant people, and flew up and back from Philadelphia a bunch of times. Didn't get in. I had this job.
And it was Wharton or bust, sort of?
Yeah. I had gotten into some other schools, but I really wanted to go. I did know at the time, like this, I thought that it had to be like a top for it to be worth it because it was a lot of money. It still is. And then I was also applying for jobs, and I wanted kind of like this high quality job, like in the real estate, like private equity world. And I went down to this one particular place, interviewed a bunch of times, all the partners, everybody. They said, hey, great job, go home. We're going to call you back with an offer. We're looking forward to you coming on board. And they called back and said, we're going in a different direction. And so that was like a shocking thing. So I have an email. Actually, it's printed out on my desk. And you can tell I'm out of it because I write the email only in the subject line. And, and I remember I think I was crying a little bit. And I said to my dad, I wrote to my dad and I said, the name of the company is out, screw it, on my own, and, I'm going to kill it. And so that was kind of the decision that it was kind of that's burned the boats mentality, where it was no more this kind of like a victim mindset. And it was like, we're going to move this forward. So that's when the Normal brand really became like a thing that I was going to push forward every day, no matter what.
So you launched the hats first. How'd they sell? Did they sell well right out of the gate?
It sold out. Yeah, it sold out.
All e-commerce at the time, all online.
All online. Got really lucky because at the time, like brands like Shopify had just come out, so we were able to build a website for very cheap. Ourselves, and then sold out. Now it wasn't like we had thousands of units. We bought very limited runs and was shipping them out of my parents' basement. But through word of mouth marketing, through I had a big built-in network with my siblings. I had a lot of siblings who told their friends.
Get 50 cousins, right? So that's 50 hats.
If you look at, we have, I think in the first 3 days before we sold out, I've written a blog about this. I think we had like 102 first customers. And if you look at those 102, which I do like every year in March when it's our anniversary, I think I know 85 of them. Friends, family, my grandpa, people like that.
So have you been able to maintain sort of that same vision as it's continued to grow? I mean, does the same mission and passion and purpose with just finding this perfect shirt, is that held true? What is it, we 9 years in?
Yeah, it really has. I think that any brand, and maybe you've had similar experiences, but I think that there's points where it can kind of veer off track. And it isn't exactly what it was at the beginning. We have really worked hard. That has happened with us. We have really worked hard, especially recently, to, drive down our lane. And it is very, I still use the same brand guidelines that I had from the very beginning. And so we've really tried to remain true to the mission. And it's because it really is an authentic thing for us. Like it's really kind of a part of me and my brothers. And then as far as the dedication to the product, that is absolutely never waved off. Because at the end of the day, I love clothes, love them, and have my entire life. And
that's your role, right?
Yeah.
You are setting the vision for the collections each year. I mean, as you look at what your role is, in addition to the leadership and the vision for the organization.
Yeah, I'm very
tactical piece is the.
Yeah, every single piece, like goes through me eventually. And we have a phenomenal team that is doing incredible jobs on the design and the sourcing and, fit tech and things like that. So we have this awesome team that works together. But yes, I'm extremely involved with the product. I try on every single piece before we kind of like hit go on it. And then I got my big, I do a huge like delivery to myself from the warehouse every single season. And I got mine last night, and like our team knows, like on the product side, that's a long night for us because I go through every single thing. I send notes on them and stuff. So it really is like, how'd
they do?
It was good. I'm wearing the stuff, so I'm excited. Like it always, like I woke up happy about it. But there were a few of the styles, like I need to check them to make sure that they lined up to what the production was. Like there's a few things I could feel that were a little bit maybe off, but I'm really happy with this season.
And and you're obviously you're growing, and the business is growing both, and we can talk about the locations, and you got 11 retail locations now. It's a very Midwest centered brand. Mm-hmm. Can you maintain that authenticity to the Midwest even as you start to grow outside the Midwest? Do you think that that'll resonate with folks in all parts of the country?
Yeah, I think so. That was kind of the business plan at the beginning. If you look at like some of the most celebrated brands or the biggest brands, they're all telling a specific story, right? Ralph Lauren was kind of the best at that, right? He told this kind of very, it depends on what brand you're talking about. And, if you're talking about Double RL, he tells this very like Western story, and that, that resonates throughout the country, throughout the world. If you're talking about, and kind of like the main polo brands, you're telling this kind of, East Coast, Northern East Coast kind of preppy, Kennedy kind of a lifestyle. Or if you look at tons of other, brands, surf brands selling very West Coast, or, brands like Vineyard Vines or Southern Tide or Johnny O, right? They tell very regional stories and that are specific a lot of times to an area. And, I think that what we have seen is that the story that is kind of an inherently Midwest story of versatility, a little bit of a rugged nature to it, a real focus on the practical nature of the clothes and kind of comfort above all and good quality, that resonates throughout the country.
And as you continue to grow the business, if we can talk about culture a little bit and sort of your leadership style, because you go from being the fulfillment guy, right? Like designing the hats, shipping them out, doing that whole thing. And now you're running an organization with e-commerce. Wholesale is a big piece of what you do. Obviously the stores, the management of all of that, the vision. Like what's been the biggest challenge for you personally as you sort of had to evolve as a leader within that whole scope?
Yeah, I think that, and my brothers and I, and we run it together. We talk about it all the time, but we have a lot more people now, and there needs to be more, structure in place, and more, policies and standards and procedures. It's just like when any team gets bigger, there needs to be, more coaches. And so at the beginning, when it was just a few of us in like a shared working space, it was kind of like, you yell across the room, hey, we need this or we need that. And that stuff doesn't work anymore. So we have a big focus on our people and our processes, and we have a standards of like what we expect, what our brand values are, and all of those things had to be kind of like we learned that you can't just do it by teach by example. I think you need to like lay the expectations out and then reinforce them on a daily basis. And so that's been something where we have taken a lot of advice from my dad, even talking to my mom and my grandpa before he passed, and then also reading tons of books on this stuff and trying to learn from way smarter people, which we've been able to do.
Yeah, I think Danny Meyer, the restaurateur, his book, Setting the Table, he talks about constant gentle pressure. Yeah. Like people are going to move your salt shakers all the time, just a little bit. You got to go in every day and reinforce, this is where I want the salt shakers to go, and this is what it is. And everybody has a good intention with why they're putting it where they're putting it, but everybody has a different reason to move it. And that kind of constant reinforcement, that's the biggest challenge, right? Because the one day that you don't move it and you tolerate it being somewhere else is the beginning of that slippery slope.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that, but I think that's great. We have a big focus on humility within our company. It's one of our core values, just being humble. And because we think that ego ruins all teams. And the one thing that we have learned, we grew up on a big team, right? We grew up of, me and my two brothers, we have a family of 10 kids. So you grow up on this team. We played sports throughout our whole lives. Like sports were very informative for us through college. And so we absolutely believe that we can't do anything with an Owner brand without a great team, and ego kills teams. So having this humility. So like we have a conference room in like kind of like the middle of the office that's like glass. You can see into it. And one of the big things is, we don't ever want one of those chairs to be kind of rolling out. We want all the chairs tucked into the table like at all times. And so that's something where we try to make it like it's like well known, but it doesn't always happen. So, if I walk by that room and the table is on, I'm walking in there and I'm just going to push it in, and everybody can kind of like see that. And, and then you see your team does that. It's the same with picking up a piece of trash that's in the middle of the floor. Like those things are super important.
Absolutely. So let's dive a little deeper into the core value thing. So humility, what else you got on the list?
A lot of this stuff is, like I said, we regurgitate a lot of much smarter people, and we try to read a lot of these books. So we love Patrick Lencioni. I don't know if you've read any of his books.
I haven't.
Okay, so he's got a lot of great ones. The two that we really like are 5 Dysfunctions of a Team and The Ideal Team Player. And The Ideal Team Player, he talks about obviously what the ideal characteristics of a team player are, and he talks about humble, hungry, and smart. So that was like the foundation of how we tried to build this team. So lack of ego, hungry, you're trying to get better each day, and smart, just having some emotional intelligence, like on dealing with people and stuff like that. We have built it out a little bit more. In fact, we all carry around this card. So we talk about our core values are positivity, ownership. So just take it that is a super important thing, like having some accountability, solution driven, humble, and hungry. And so all of our people have one of these. We hope they keep it in their wallet or keep it at their desk. And then one of the things we do, and actually got this idea from a really good friend named Chris Hoffman, is we have our core values written on note cards. And on the one side of the core value card is, it'll say humble, and then it's an example of how that would be, that would be shown like in daily action, just examples of somebody being humble that we would like to see. And on the other side, it's blank. And so what we task our managers with is once a month, seeing something in your team, looking for the good of one of our core values being exhibited, write them a note and give them that card. And so when you walk around our office, it's kind of a cool thing. You see those core value cards all around people's desk, and it's a nice thing to see. So
is there a public display? They post it obviously, but is there a presentation of that at all?
There actually isn't. That would be a good idea. We should probably do that. Maybe a core value award kind of each month and note everybody.
Yeah, so we actually, interesting, it took us 30 years to go through the core value exercise, because I think like you, I had this sense that everybody's going to get it by osmosis, and if I live them every day, then everybody gets it, and you start to realize that you got turnover, you got new people coming in, you've got people that don't express them all the same way. And so we finally articulated them like a year ago. And we started with a core value champion. So every month we have all of our supervision select somebody in the bakery who has exhibited the core values in a way, and they get the parking spot closest to the door, and they get to spin a wheel for a prize. But so the public display of it's really important because it just reinforces it. But I love the idea of the note cards too, because we got to do more of catching people doing things right. Yeah. I think that's the hardest thing to do. It's so easy to take your great people for granted, and the squeaky wheel is the one that you constantly are giving all the attention to, and you got to flip that on its head. And we don't do a good enough job with it. Like, we got to do better with it. But
well, I like your idea. I think that's another example. That's something we're going to steal. So that's a good idea on the public display of it.
So what's been you're 9 years in. What's been the biggest challenge as you've continued to scale? And I mean, I know you have the three distinct aspects of the business, so maybe there's a distinct one for each one, or is the idea that they should all sort of grow in unison, this sort of e-commerce, and like one feeds the other, and the wholesale and the retail? Because I did hear you talk about the fact that the wholesale partners tend to do better when you open a retail location in that town, and that then drives the e-commerce, because I'll go in, and once I try something on and like the feel, then maybe I'm just going to buy at home online once I know what my size is and I feel comfortable with the brand. So it's sort of, do they all just sort of the kind of rising tide carries all ships kind of thing?
Not necessarily. They grow at different rates, I think, and we like that. I think it gives the company some strength, right? It's diversification of revenue streams, really. And so that's been, depending on the year, there have been some points where wholesale is killing it, and like our online isn't performing as much, or the opposite, or the same with our stores. And so that diversification of revenue, I think, gives us some strength and allows us to figure things out when Facebook changes their algorithm, or when Apple makes a big change, or when the supply chain is messed up during COVID and wholesale is basically shut down, right? So it diversifies kind of your risk a little bit. But our goal is certainly to service all of those customers in each channel. And it is great when things are going well. They definitely feed off each other. So they don't take away from either of the channels, which is a great thing. And it's something that our team works very hard on, really taking care of the customer in each of those channels.
When you're telling, you get to tell your own brand story so well inside of your own stores, and you certainly get to do it online. How do you do it? Just out of curiosity, because we're in the same, we have retail, we have a wholesale business. How do you do it in the wholesale sector? Because now you're maybe in a department store, or you're in a store, and you don't necessarily get to determine placement, or which brands you're up next to, or even how the product is presented. Or do you have more control over that than I think?
Yeah, no, the wholesale, it's a really interesting thing, because wholesale is so foundational to us. Our company, I started selling online in March 2015, but it was basically a glorified lemonade stand until we went to a trade show called the Chicago Collective, which is still our biggest show, in August of 15. Me and my brothers went, and that's where we met with really mostly independent retailers from around the country. And I think we opened like 20 stores in that weekend. And I remember thinking on the way up there, like, this company is either going to be something or it's not, and it's going to depend on this weekend. And so the wholesale, my brother Lan really kind of runs all that for us, and has from the very beginning. But those relationships are super important to us, and we really relate to those guys because they're small business owners like us. And so we take a lot of pride in performing for them and helping, make them money and keep them going.
Is most of the wholesale business independent retailers, or is it?
Most of it is, like, from a volume of doors, it's mostly independent. We sell through some big retailers like Dillard's, Stitch Fix. We're on Nordstrom online. We're in a bunch of Southman under companies like Jackson Gray or Eula in Kansas City. Like, we've got some really strong, bigger partners too. And the great thing, so they do a great job. At the end of the day, these third-party retailers are phenomenal merchants, right? They take brands that they curate from all over the place, and everyone is trying to sell them and get their shelf space, and they distill it down to what they think are the best. And then they tell the story of each of those brands. So we have learned so much from these great wholesalers. In not only, in fact, we had one in our office literally yesterday, who Michael Dreskin with Jackson Gray, who's just a phenomenal merchant and can kind of like feel what's coming next and what is good right now. And so we walk him through our fall 25. So literally like a year from now, and and that's really a relationship that my brother Lan had, and it was kind of like, hey, what do you like? What do you not like? What are you seeing is working? And so there's help kind of from all sides.
Sure. How far ahead are you when you think about collections? Is fall 25 the furthest ahead, or are you spring 26?
Yep. Spring 26 is the SKU plan is being outlined right now.
So, what are you looking at? What informs you as what spring of 26 ought to look like?
It's everything. It's both, of course you look at trend reports and what's coming out of, Europe is normally a little bit ahead of us. There's trend reports that come out on things like colors and stuff like that. Also, our past of what has performed well and what do we think needs some evolving, and how does the selling report? So it's a lot of past performance, and then it's also just, hey, what is something that I really liked? What is something I like that fits into our story? Maybe it's something that my dad had in his closet when we were little kids, or maybe it's something I remember my grandpa wearing, or one of my cousins wearing, or something, man, I wish I always had that. So that's the funnest part for me, is kind of going into memories and history, and even looking at old pictures and thinking like, hey, what if we brought that back, but we updated the fabric a little bit so it was a little bit more soft, or put a better wash on it, or I wish that color was a little different. So that's the funnest part. So as somebody who doesn't know anything about the fashion industry, how much of a bet is that collection relative to the overall volume? So, I mean, when is a big part of what you're doing, these kind of recurring staples, and so that's so that the collection for that particular season isn't a huge bet, or if you fall on your face in a collection, how detrimental, I guess, is it to what's happening? Yeah, that's a good question. We really want to meet the customer where they are. So, our stuff, we have like definitely hits of fashion, and this is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but we don't place our big bets there, right? We're the normal brand. Like, we want to make outfitting for your daily wear easy, right? So we take bigger bets on fabric, on fabrications, and we feel very confident on that because we just have a high degree of confidence that ours are better than what are out there right now. So that's where we take a lot of our bets on fabric. Our core styles are really important to us. So I'd say the foundation of each collection is built on core. And then we'll take, smaller risks on fashion colors and fashion styles, make them prove themselves for a season, and then come back on the second season, really kind of blow it out. And so you'll see that a lot, like, this year, like in fall, you'll see that we have maybe tested the waters last year with some outerwear styles or some jackets or coats or things like that, sold out. And now in fall 24, we'll make that a bigger part of the collection. Okay. And women's has become a part of what you're doing too, right? Yeah, women's has been like a big growing part of our business, and in stores too. What does it represent in terms of revenue? Like, it's about 30% of the business. Okay. It used to be way less. It's a lot newer than men's. We're really figuring out who she is, who that buyer is, and we're seeing the results, really right now in real time. And is that you also determining those collections, or do you have? You in female form? Yes. So yeah, we really depend on our designers there. Our director of product is like a sister growing up. She's literally part of our family, Linda Rojas. She grew up with us since she was 8 years old. So she handles all product, and she's like the boss of the entire company, really. And so we really depend on her on the direction of the women's side. And what you in your mind, is it always 30 to 40% of the business, or do you think it has the potential to be greater than that? Or how do you sort of envision as you look into the future? Yeah, I think it has the potential to be a lot bigger. I think that, when you look at like the without detracting from the men's and what we've seen, and we've run kind of some tests in some of our stores and just re-merchandising some of the stores to give our stores a bigger footprint of women's. And what we've seen is that it doesn't take away from any of the men's side. It's only accretive on the women's side. So I think the more that we show that, we can provide a unique and dependable product for our women. We have so many women shopping us. That's really where that's really why we introduce women's, is because we have so many women shopping us for their husband or son or boyfriend or whatever, that they were asking for stuff for themselves. So the more we show and the more we merchandise it in a way where, hey, we've got something for you too, we don't think it takes away from our men's business at all.
So where does the growth come from as you look down the road? Is obviously they all grow, you said, at different rates. Is retail, how many locations do you think you can have in 5 to 10 years?
I don't know. We don't have a set number. I mean, we certainly know that there is the opportunity for more. We opened 5 last year in 2023. That was a lot for us. That was like, we had almost doubled our store count. So this year we've spent a lot of time on just operating them more. And I'm sure you can relate to that, and just getting the right people in place that we can operate these efficiently and really serve our customer in the best way possible. We'll open more next year. But we don't have like a number where it's like, we got to hit this. Our thing is we want to make sure that we just stay true to the product and stay true to the customer, and, don't do anything in the name of growth that would detract from either of those two. And
when you look at real estate opportunities, or you look for these locations, I mean, I know you've got some that are in malls and some that are sort of, I don't know, freestanding, or I don't know what the term would be, strip malls kind of thing. Like, where do you see where your brand fits in better? Does the mall still exist as a potential growth pattern? Because everything I read is that you'd want to stay away from that. But.
Yeah, no, definitely they do. So what we have learned, and my brother Conrad really kind of runs that, like on the store side. Actually, and our brother Nico, who's not a part in Orbrand, but he has his own real estate company. He represents us. He lives in Nashville, but he represents us as we start our store expansion. What we have really seen is the good malls are phenomenal, and the bad malls are really bad. And so our stores that are in malls, they're in good ones and are performing extremely well. So yeah,
do they outperform the other? I mean,
it depends on the store. It really depends on the store. I mean, it depends on the population density. I can say this. The ones that are in the good malls are in our top 25% of our stores. So they do really well. And I mean, we have one here in West County that's a great mall and is a phenomenal store. One Keystone in Indianapolis, and I could keep going down the list. But we're sort of agnostic on whether or not it's in a mall or if it's freestanding, as long as our customer is there. So that's really our job, to make sure that our customer is there. So, we're in small towns, like we're in a town like Birmingham, Alabama, which you wouldn't think that's more of a tertiary market. You wouldn't think that's not New York or LA or Chicago or whatever. But we're at like Maine and Maine, where they all shop, the people in Birmingham. And so those are the things we really, same thing in Springfield, Missouri. So those are the things we really look for.
So what keeps you up at night? I mean, as you kind of look ahead and do this thing. I mean, I know we all are up in the middle of the night. So what is it mainly for you?
I think it depends on the week. One of the things that we've really learned, there's always problems, always. And it used to like really upset me. And I remember my dad just said, grow up. You're going to have, things that, happen. And, it was almost like you got to get like a little bit hardened. And so I think that we have grown up. I definitely stay up late and think about things. I think it just depends on what part of the season we're at. Right now, a month ago, I was really worried on getting our stuff here on time. There's a bunch of freight problems going on kind of like across the world. I was really worried about that. Now we've got a collaboration launching tomorrow. I want to make sure that goes well. So I think it just depends. My role changes, my brother's role changes depending on what part of the year, and there's always a problem to worry about.
Sure. And then, they don't go. And there's still a problem, right? Some people say they might be a good problem, but it's still a challenge. So what do you do to kind of reset and recharge?
Work out.
Yeah.
I think working out, I know you do that a lot. Working out is a really important part of our lives. Always.
Yeah. So there's some rumor that you're working out with Coach Stu, that you and your dad get after it with Coach Stu. My son and I were actually there this morning, and we haven't seen you there in the morning. Are you not an AM guy?
I'm not. I tried to be, and I like to get to the office early.
Okay.
And that's where, and I want to get to the office early, and so I have my espresso, and I get to the office, as early as I can, and I can get a lot done in the morning. My best time would be to work out during lunch, recently with Stu, who I've known for years and is a phenomenal guy. I didn't know you worked out there.
He said we should bring a ski erg down here and maybe do a little.
Get me off that thing. He killed me on that thing. But yeah, I've been working out with him in the evenings lately. But yeah, I would love to be the morning guy. I'm just right now I'm not. And so I like.
Well, there's room there in the morning if you want to come. So yeah, my son. I mean, and you work out with your dad? Is that right?
Yeah, we always did. Not always. Sometimes he's with another brother or whatever. He's been with me lately, but we grew up, all of us, kind of working out together, and with friends too. Good friends too, and cousins. Always like for sports. But my dad has 10 kids, and he is such an incredible dad that I promise you this is true. If he had 10 separate children, ask him to work out on a given Saturday at 10 separate times, he would work out 10 separate times in that day, because I think that time where you're working out together has become a real bonding time for us. And it
misery loves company. Kids. I think there's some of that. No, Stu said that your dad gets after it too.
Beast.
So
yeah.
Which is great. So, well, I really appreciate your time. I mean, there's so much that we could talk about. There's a lot out there on the origin story and some of that other stuff. And so I was really much more interested in kind of diving into just some of your thought process and some of your leadership. And it's a fun brand to watch. And obviously being local, it's really cool to support it. But I really do appreciate you taking a few minutes today.
Oh, thank you. This was really enjoyable. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks so much for joining me today. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed sharing these insights from folks I truly admire. Be sure and follow the show in your favorite podcast player to be alerted to newly released episodes. And share a comment if you have any feedback or future contributor recommendations.